Is from the book of Genesis, chapter 9, verses 18 to 27. The sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was peopled. Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard. He drank some of the wine and became drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, lowest of slaves shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed by the Lord my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. May God make space for Japheth, and let him live in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So many people are familiar with Noah. Heard of this guy? Not everyone's as familiar with Noah, the planter of the first vineyard. Remember, a lot of our stories in Genesis, we can know where they came from by asking, what question are they answering? Where did wine come from? Well, let me tell you. Why do we not like the Canaanites? Well, let me tell you. These stories get passed down over the years, and this story comes post-flood. After the flood, after a flood of historic destruction, we get today's story. Some of us feel like we're living in historically overwhelming times. We see natural disasters on the news. We see all that comes alongside it. We see failures to respond. We see those blaming. And the news of another disaster becomes more than we can handle. In our own space, we hear about the fires. We watch the news and we hear about flooding back east. We turn the channel and we hear more about oppression and division, addiction, overwhelming amounts of violence around us, and it feels like it will never end. It becomes overwhelming, and we recognize that it's never just one thing. It's a job change in the midst of a diagnosis. It's the family issue in the midst of the midlife crisis. It's the simple request to round up your grocery bill to feed those who are hungry, while complaining that you're paying $11 for eggs when they were $10 before the election and it was supposed to go down. And when is Mexico going to pay for that wall anyway? And then you recognize you've been in line for so long and you're exhausted, and you get back in the car and you go, I'm in another line, we just call it traffic. And then the repressed emotions of something from 5 years ago that you've completely forgotten about comes and hits you like something from the rearview mirror. How can anyone ask for one more thing? How can anyone expect anything else from us when we are spread so thin and carrying so much? How can anyone even dare to speak to us without first reading our mind, meeting all of our emotional needs before they speak? How dare they? Sometimes we're just at our end, we're exhausted, and we have nothing more to give. We're a hot mess. Enter Noah. This is not the Noah from your pop-up storybooks. Not the Noah from your nursery walls. It's not the friendly face with the puffy cloud-looking beard and the little dove on his shoulder. This is Noah who's seen too many things. This is Noah who's seen more than he could handle, so it seems. Of course, he won't tell you that. I doubt he would admit it, probably not to his wife even or his kids. Probably not even to the dove or the raven or the other critters sitting around. Maybe on an occasion the sloth is calm enough for him to say, dude, it's rough in here. Maybe not even to God, which is a problem. And that brings us to today's scripture. People have asked me before why I tend to preach this piece of the Noah narrative rather than the flood itself. And for me, it's a matter of practicality. Let me ask you this. When in your life have you needed advice for how to face an apocalyptic world-ending event? Anybody? No? How many of you have ever felt like the circumstances around you have changed so much that your life will never be the same again? Anybody? See what I mean? This story is so practical. We've all fallen apart. We've all said something stupid. We've all been embarrassed. Some of us have actually found ourselves passed out naked, found by other people we wish didn't find us. This is a practical story for a relatable people. Now, think about those times when you've been so overwhelmed with life that you found yourself in a self-destructive cycle. Welcome to Noah. Think about what he's been through. There's the flood, but before the flood, it was him building an ark in preparation for a flood while everyone mocked him. So he goes through all the social upheaval, all the rejection. Then he gets on the boat and has to watch all of it fall apart. Then he has to deal with an ark full of animals and family members in confined space, in bad weather. How many of you get cranky when it's been cold for a couple of days and you've been stuck inside with the rain? Imagine this do that for a month plus. Think about where we were in month 2 of the pandemic. And he didn't have Amazon Prime. There are all these questions I'll bet Noah would still like to discuss with God. But no time to answer them, no opportunity to lodge a complaint about the situation. And now the tragedy is over. The disaster has passed. Noah has planted gardens. He's trying to feed his family. He's included a vineyard. Was it a part of a bigger farming project? Was it a part of his own DIY self-care and science experiment? However it started, Noah now has access to some wine, and he's enjoying it. Unfortunately, the wine brings down his inhibitions. The wine brings down Noah's defenses. Everything he's dealt with, everything he's repressed, everything that he had compartmentalized seems to come out in one night. And by the end, Noah is passed out and naked. One of his sons finds him. Now, this doesn't have to be a bad ending to a story. This can be that awkward moment when you walked in on your parents and you never want to think about it again. This can be that moment where you first had to help an older family member in the shower for the first time and it was weird. This can be that time you walked into a public restroom and saw something you didn't mean to see. We've all seen things we didn't want to see, and we can laugh about it later, depending on how people deal with it. Noah doesn't deal with it. Not well. He blames the son who sees him. He curses him. There was no sign on the door. There was no warning that said, naked dad inside, avert. There was no way to unsee what he had seen. So he goes and gets the other two brothers for help, and probably to process. They all back in with their eyes covered, and either they've exaggerated how little they saw, or their brother gave them really good directions. There's no way they're about to look. I mean, it's your dad. So they were probably content to pretend this moment never happened. Imagine the next day if Noah had just kept his mouth shut. Do you think the sons are going to talk about it? No. Not when dad's around, at least. But then Noah wakes up and faces another flood. And this time it's a flood of shame. He wakes up and faces a river of emotions. Each one draws out another, and his mouth opens before his brain thinks. Now, in a crisis, here's one of these fun things that science has taught us. In a crisis, in a traumatic situation, the first thing to act in our brain is our instinct. It literally comes from the brain stem. It is the closest part of our brain to the extremities of our body that our brain needs to move. So before we touch something hot, or as we feel something hot, the very base of our brain, as close as the electrical impulse can get, it says, move that back. If we feel something pointy and sharp, we get away. If something growls at us, we run, or we attack it, fight or flight, right? Instinct saves our lives. That's why it's there. The second thing in our brain to operate is emotions. Emotions are found in the inner part of the brain. I always tell people, think of your brain as a Tootsie Pop. The ooey gooey chewy center is your emotions. Aren't the emotions all ooey gooey? The brain stem is the stick, kind of holds on to everything else, and then logic's the shell around it that holds it all together. But in a crisis, the instinct comes first, and then the emotions. So all the emotions Noah had flood out before his logic brain can say, these are your sons, they didn't do anything wrong. This is your issue. Emotional responses help us set safe boundaries. They help us know when things are wrong or things are going great. They can be a great temperature check of how things are going around us, but they're not always accurate. While emotions can often lead us to set good boundaries, they can also lead us to need to give some apologies. And then logic kicks in, but often it's just too late. Throughout the 6 weeks of Lent, we're going to be talking a lot about trauma. Each week, we'll take it from a little different angle. And then Thursday nights, if you want to join in with us, we're going to do a more in-depth dive and walk this through for the next 4 weeks during our Thursday night Zooms at 7. But I want to give you all a definition of trauma to start with. Some of you all are thinking, have I ever experienced trauma? Is my entire life trauma? How is my trauma compared to other trauma? We don't really compare them, but here's a definition to start out with. Sudden or sustained life experience that brings change and a new reality that you didn't choose. Change you did not choose that leaves you in a new reality. It's not a complicated definition. Trauma can be sudden, like an accident, an injury, the death of a loved one, a natural disaster. It can occur over time, abuse, neglect, chronic pain, climate change. Someone asked me, why doesn't the definition say bad experiences? I don't know. Think about your birthday. I just had one. Are they all good? Are some of them bad? Think about your birthday. Is it traumatic? It can be. It can be. It probably depends on your own mental health, your own spiritual health, how grounded you are. If we're well-balanced and have some perspective, one of those birthdays that ends with a 0 as we get older can be a wonderful celebration of love and life. If we're control freaks who feel compelled to change the world and think we need every possible moment to do it, if we're in denial and don't want to admit the change is going on around us, we might not be fans of it, or if we've changes going on in our body for the first time, like many of our children and youth, shifting our reality in profound ways, our birthdays might make us a hot mess. They're not intrinsically bad, but they can be traumatic. Trauma is something we will all face. Think about it. Just by the definition of change we did not choose that leaves us in a new reality means every day we get older, we have the potential to experience trauma as we compare things back to the way it was. Junior high kids, adolescents, are by definition trauma victims because their bodies are changing dramatically in ways they did not choose, which makes all their family members and their teachers secondary trauma victims as those supporting them. That means every family has faced trauma because at some point all of us went through adolescence. Understanding how it impacts us does provide some level of resilience. That's why we talk about it. Knowing that our bodies can instinctually enter a fight or flight mode is important. It's also good to know there's a third option, which is freeze. Deer do this when the car headlights point at them. Possum are experts at this. They play dead till people walk around. Possum climb out of dumpsters all the time because someone scooped them up with a shovel and threw them away thinking they were dead. Some of us as human beings have been doing this in the face of political upheaval for generations. Sometimes we call it denial, burying our heads in the sand. Sometimes it's just being overwhelmed. Sometimes it's learned helplessness. As we receive from the generation before us, it doesn't matter. It won't make a difference. Knowing that our emotions will bubble up before our logic kicks in is also important. Just knowing how this works. Knowing that our sense of timeline and consequences are connected to logic explains why we didn't think about the consequences when we said the thing we said. There's a little grace built in there, right? My emotions came out before my logic. It's not necessarily my fault, it's a natural process, but it does mean I probably need to apologize. Sorry about that, Serena, I didn't mean to say it. Understanding how things impact us gives some level of resilience, and it keeps us from cursing our children from our own stupidity. It keeps us from checking out when we really need to open up. It keeps us from hurting ourselves instead of practicing self-care. Because the trauma that we do not transform, the trauma we don't deal with, we will transfer. What we don't transform within ourselves, we will transfer to others. The short version of this is hurt people, right? But I've heard people say, well, I've been hurt, so that means I'm definitely going to hurt other people. And they feel doomed, they feel destined because they've been hurt. But it's not really, it's hurt people have a higher potential to hurt others if they don't deal with the hurt. The hurt and the harm that we don't transform, we will transfer. Sometimes onto those around us, sometimes onto those we've justified deserve it. And sometimes we act inwardly. We hurt ourselves because we think we deserve it. We become the victim in our own story. Or sometimes we hurt ourselves because we know it'll hurt others. Isn't that crazy? But again, instinct and emotion, logic's not in here yet. And think about it, if timeline's a part of a logic process, then when are we really over something? When does an event of harm end? Not until we can get our logic brain wrapped around it. Until logic comes to the table, it's still happening. That's why many researchers don't talk about PTSD as post-traumatic. They refer to it as perpetual traumatic stress disorder. It can't go away till you've transformed it, till you've dealt with what it was that hurt you. Trauma can hurt. No lie. Trauma can hurt, and you can't avoid it. There's no level of goodness out there that'll leave us without tears. If Jesus couldn't escape it, then Christians need to stop thinking about righteousness as painlessness. Living a life that has no struggle is not a virtue. If Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" If Jesus kneels in the garden and cries in his prayers, then why do we think we have to be fine? Why do we think there's virtue in perfection rather than in our vulnerability? When we've been hurt, we can't avoid it, and there is no right belief that will keep us from facing our feelings. If Noah wasn't exempt for it, if Noah in all of his faithfulness was not exempt from pain and trauma, then Christians need to stop using life events as proof of faith. Those who have bad things happen to them don't deserve it. They're just human. So what do we do with it? We're going to dive in depth on this a little bit over the next few weeks. What do we do with the hurts, the questions, and the doubts? What do we do with all the energy that builds up inside us when that fight or flight energy comes and we feel like we're a paper bag trying to contain a tornado? What do we do with that? What do we do with the apathy? Because we're exhausted. Over the next month, we're going to talk about all these things. We're going to talk about how we begin to feel like someone who's been hurt, how we take that identity of victim on. And clearly Noah did. Oh, poor woe is Noah. It's got to be everybody else's fault but him. How do we find ourselves becoming hurtful in response? How do we find ourselves as offenders, those who cause harm on others? The reality is no one ever woke up hurting others first. We all start out as victims. Everyone who's done harm started out as a victim. We tend to hurt others because we're defending ourselves, because we're fearful of being hurt again, because we've justified it in some way, and we justify it based on previous experience and harm. We're going to unpack these over the next few weeks. Over the next month, we're going to talk about all these things, and over the next season in the church, we're going to support each other through all these things. We will face it, name it, journal our feelings, exercise our bodies, draw, paint, pray, cry, hope, and heal together. We have to deal with our trauma because we know there will still be more to come. We know it's not over. It's never just one thing, and it's never just one season. We have to deal with what we got so we can prepare for what's coming. Because God's people need us. They will need us. So let's begin our healing journey.